Welcome back, everyone, to Bounce Off, the number one SlamBall podcast worldwide. I'm your host, Sam Roberts. You can find me on social media at Quantum Roberts. That's QUANTUM Roberts to talk all things SlamBall. This is the last podcast covering the regular season of the return of SlamBall to the United States after more than 15 years. And I have loved this new regular season. I've got to talk to friends about it. I've got to make new friends worldwide talking about SlamBall. I've got to interview some great players. I've got to interview some great coaches. But the season isn't done. It's now time for the very first postseason since 2008 in the US in SlamBall. If you want to even just make it precise, the very first postseason of a league, of a season that has had more than 4 teams. Because that's all we've had for the last 15 years. And I'm so excited because we've got 6 different teams vying for a championship. We've got 2 teams who are the first to feel the sting of, man, we've been eliminated. And there's a load of end of regular season awards to talk about. On today's episode of Bounce Off, we're going to talk about the results from last night's action and what that means for the playoff picture. We're going to talk about my personal predictions for these first set of playoffs. And we're going to talk about all of the first end of season awards in the brand new year of SlamBall. That's MVP, DPOY, OPOY, Coach of the Year, All SlamBall First Team, and All SlamBall Second Team. It's been a great season to cover. It's been a great season to watch as a fan. A lot of the times I end up rewatching games because I watched them the first time and I'm like, oh, that's cool, oh, that's awesome, that's great. And then I need to rewatch it and be way more critical because it's just, this sport's too fun not to just love at first sight. So I've been really excited to cover it. We're not done yet. We've still got we still have 4 games left. We've got 5 games left. 2 quarterfinal games, 2 semi-final games, and the big finale on Thursday night. But before we can get into that, before we can get to the future, we have to talk a little bit about the past, and that's last night's results. I won't go too much into the games, although there's a big thing I do want to point out that I forgot about until right as I started that sentence. I just want to talk about what that will have meant for the playoffs, and then we can talk about the playoffs. So, first matchup of the night, it was the Buzzsaw defeating the Ozone 47-40. The Ozone needed to win at least 1 game to keep them in playoff contention, and I think they need to win 2 games in order to go up on the lava and get into the playoffs officially, right? The problem was, I need someone to explain to me, and I would love to reach out to somebody and get an answer. Why was Keenan Love not playing in this game for the Ozone? He wasn't on the injury report list, so I don't know what happened there. I think he could be one of the best stoppers in this league, so why wasn't he playing and why was it Vincent Bowman? Vincent Bowman's fine, but your strategy all season has been to mix and match which one of them's playing there, and this time it was just Bowman. So I don't know what happened there from the Ozone. They needed to win to stay in the playoffs. Them losing that game means that they are the second team eliminated from playoff contention, so we had our top 6. The Buzzsaw winning meant that they were more likely to clinch the second seed going into the playoffs. The second seed in SlamBall gets a bye in the first round. They don't need to play a quarterfinal matchup. And guess what? In the second matchup of the night, the Lava beat the Slashers 51-45. And because of that, the Slashers are locked in at 3rd and the Buzzsaw clinched 2nd place. Right. Good for the Buzzsaw. Slashers maybe didn't want to jump up to 2nd. I think they should have been fighting more. It may have come down to the Lava just needed a more of a win, because by winning, they put themselves in a better position of getting the 5th seed. The problem is that they then won that 5th seed in the main event. They beat the Buzz 55-34. And I totally missed this. I misunderstood the playoff setup until last night, and Andrew Smith on Twitter, who has been another great person that's loved talking about SlamBall, and I've loved talking about SlamBall with, he correctly pointed out that both of these teams wanted to lose. With the Buzzsaw losing, the Lava would go up to 5th, and that means that the Buzzsaw don't have to play the Lava until potentially the finals, which is a better deal for them because the Lava are playing a lot better than they were earlier in the season. And if the Lava were to lose, they would go to 6th place, meaning they wouldn't have had to play the Mob until the finals. So, because the 4 and 5 matchup, the winner will play the Mob. The 3 and 6 matchup, the winner will play the Buzzsaw now. So, the Lava would have rather been in 6th than 5th, I think. But by winning both those games last night, they go into the playoff with some confidence. One thing I didn't mention from the Lava Slashers match, the Slashers lose Amir Smith in the first quarter. Unsure how bad the injury is. We'll find out tomorrow when the league releases the injury report, the injury update. But it's not the end of the world if they don't have him. I still think the Slashers will be making it out of the quarterfinals, out of the first round, and we will, I will be talking about that later on. But not having Amir Smith is a concern. Certainly is a concern for them. But that's how last night's matchup shook out. That's how it impacts the playoffs. So, as we go into our very first postseason of the brand new version of SlamBall, I'm so excited for it. The Mob are your unconsequential first seed in the league, 16-0, haven't lost a game, haven't lost a main event, a massive score differential over every other team. The Buzz are your second team. They've been second team since the very beginning of the season. Slashers, the only team. Slashers and Wrath have bothered that over the course of the season, but Buzzsaw hold strong. Buzzsaw are second. Your third place team are the Slashers. Fourth place are the Wrath. Fifth place are the Lava. And sixth place are the Griffins. That means that on Tuesday, we will have quarterfinal matchups that feature the Slashers versus the Griffs and the Wrath versus the Lava. And then in the main event of that night, it is the dunk contest, guys, which will be very exciting. I know a lot of players in the league are excited to take part in that. But let's talk about the games. I can't analyze the dunk contest. I don't know who's in it. Let's just talk about the games that we're going to get on Tuesday. I don't know which one's going to come first because it doesn't have any implications for the later game because there is no main event. So let's just talk about the games, right? We'll start with Slashers versus Griffs. I do not think that the Griffs have any chance of beating the Slashers on Tuesday if they don't have a healthy stopper. Now, Connor Hollenbeck went out with an injury a couple weeks ago. He's not yet returned to the team. That's a concern because he's someone that could have been one of the best stoppers in this league. Their replacement, Matthew Wilkerson, I didn't think was playing great, but he was at least a big physical presence under the basket. He's now hurt himself as well over the course of the weekend. That is a concern for this team. Now, the only game we've seen the Griffs play without a stopper was against the Mob, and they still scored 50 points against this Mob team, which is a good thing. It just is the Griffs are going to have to run and gun with four gunners / handlers in. Adam Stanford was the guy mainly playing minutes at the stopper. So Stanford, Holmes, Jones, and Kelly, by the looks of things, is their four. What depth does that give them for the rest of the team? I do not know. I don't think any, realistically. And I think that the Slashers are too good of an offense that anyone who's just being thrown in at stopper with like a couple days practice is not going to be up to the level they need to be to beat, to stop, to impede this Slashers offense, which is very high level at this point in the season, right? The twin wing cuts from Laubacker to Crosby, Scott, or Smith if he's healthy again will be too much for a non-stopper to handle. And even outside of that, Tony Crosby II is just going to have his way going at whoever's put at stopper, right? This is not an easy game for the Griffs. Yes, they've got a lot of offensive firepower, but the Slashers, if Amir Smith is back healthy, he is a great secondary option at stopper now because he was their starter, but Nathan Karstjens has come into his own. He's a big physical body at the stopper position, and he can get some decent outlet passing and set up offense in the half court. I just think there's a lot that the Griffs are going to have to deal with, and not having a guy who's played those stopper minutes is going to be a very, very big concern for them going into this postseason. The last game that these two teams played, the Slashers, it's the only game they've played. The Slashers won 67-50. Tony Crosby II had 30 points, and that was the infamous game from earlier this season where the Griffins were playing two stoppers at once. Now, that hampered their offensive capabilities. The ironic thing being, we've just talked about, they don't have any stoppers going into this game on Tuesday. They've only got offensive capabilities. So I think this will be a run and gun game from the Griffs, and they're just going to have to try and outscore the Slashers. It's going to be hard with Nathan Karstjens there. It's going to be really hard on the defensive end to just get in the way of the Slashers. But the Griffins have done well at doing defensive sets inside the Tramps and on the island area. I think that there's hope in that, but I think it's like a 5% hope. The Griffins are good. I don't want this to come across as hating or being a hater on them. I just think if you look at the team makeup right now and how the two different teams are playing, I've not got a lot of faith that the Griffins will be able to pull off an upset against the third-seeded Slashers. So that's my pick for that game. The other game on Tuesday, and this is again where I'm not being biased ever, if people think that, cool, but the team I picked preseason, the team I've been really excited to support, the Wrath, they're the 4th seed, they're going up against the Lava, who are the 5th seed, and even though last night's matchup against the Buzz, for argument's sake, the Buzz would rather lose. The Lava weren't necessarily happy about that win because it means they've got to face the Mob in the next round. Even if last night's win was easy, quote unquote, the Lava are still going into the playoffs with 2 straight wins under the belt and like a successful 2 weeks after a very dismal first 2.5 weeks, right? I do not like the Wrath's chances of beating the Lava. I think Faisal Shafat is an excellent stopper. He is a very good stopper. He leads the league in stops per game. And I think that that's going to be an incredibly difficult person to come up against for a Wrath offense that is very much Ty McGee score everything, or Darian Slade get some points, or Ty and Darian play together. I just don't think they have enough firepower to get past Shafat. The Wrath are also dealing with injuries at the stopper position. Yes, Trey Landers is listed as a stopper. He was not playing the beginning of this season at that role. He was playing as a gunner, and I think he looked a lot better as a gunner than he does as a stopper. He does not look good right now playing that stopper role. And I think that the Lava, with their much improved offense, is going to cause some problems. Now, the Wrath did beat the Lava in their game earlier this season. That was with all of the injuries. That was including when Ty McGee was out with concussion protocol. But the game was tight. It was 66-61. This was before the Lava found their stride in terms of offense. No Bryce Moraine in that game either. So he's back. He adds a wrinkle. You know, he's not lit the world on fire, but he is coming back from recurring ankle injuries. And so you kind of are just hoping that he's going to give you something. And he has been doing that for the Lava, on top of Shafat being a great defensive player, on top of Jihad Shockley and Josh Shannon really finding their flow as part of this offense, on top of Paxton Hendry becoming a great facilitator from the island. I think the Lava are a dangerous team, and I do not like the Wrath's chances of going up against them in the first round, or any round for that matter. I think the Lava are good. They are a good team. And so I do not like the Wrath's chances of beating them. So I think from Tuesday, the Slashers will beat the Griffins, and then the Wrath will lose to the Lava, unfortunately, on a much improved team. That takes us to Tuesday, and I will be asking the league later on today, because they've not put out yet what the schedule is for Thursday. I don't believe so anyway. I will very quickly check the website. But to my knowledge, they've not said which game goes on first on Thursday. So you've got the 2 semi-finals matchups, which is the first seed versus the winner of 4 versus 5, and the second seed versus the winner of 3 versus 6. As I've laid out there, I think that's going to be Mob versus Lava, and I think it's going to be Buzz versus Slashers, right? Right, they have put it out. And it is as I kind of expected. So on Thursday, the semi-final setup is that it will be Mob versus the winner of 4 and 5 first, and then it will be the Buzz versus the winner of 3 and 6. And then it will be the championship game. Now, if this is the same scheduling as it has been throughout the regular season, that's a quick turnaround for the second team. And some people might go, well, that's unfair. That's an advantage to the team that wins the first game. And yes, but the team that wins the first game is most likely the Mob, who are the first seed, who earned the right to get a rest because they've got the most wins this season. That's what seeding does. It gives you a benefit when it comes to playoffs because you've been the best team during the regular season. I'd be interested to know, and I will be asking this, did the coaches, did the first seed get to decide which game they played? Because you might think that's a stupid question, but players are saying that they feel better if they've played the second game and then go straight into the main event. The stats kind of are mixed on, like, I think it's pretty much even. If it's not, it's a 1 or 2 game differential between the winner of the first game winning the main event versus the winner of the second game winning the main event. But on commentary all season, Coach Kirsch has said, I don't care what the stats say, you would rather play the first game and get that 45-minute rest and then go into the main event. So I will ask, because I want to know, was that a request from Kirsch? Is that his benefit of being the first seed? Or is that just always what the plan was going to be? Either way, I think it's valid, it's fine. That's the first seed's, prerogative to get that extra rest going into the main event. But that's what the matchups are in my head, and that's what the lineup is for the night. Thursday's first match will be Mob versus, again, I think Lava. Anyone betting against the Mob at this point is foolish. They are, the Lava and Wrath, whichever team go up against the Mob, they're both teams that I think, because they've not played them that much this season, are both teams that I think could trouble the Mob in a game, right? If it's just one game and it's win or go home, I think they could challenge. But that's only if the Wrath are healthy. And like I said, I do not think they're beating the Lava anyway. And with the Lava, they need to be very focused on winning. And that might sound silly, but it's focused on winning at all costs and with your foot on the other team's neck. Because in their only game this season, the Lava were up 21-18 at the end of half, right? At halftime. And there were a couple of plays they ran when they were only up by like 3 or 4, even at 1 point. That was a bad sentence. But even at a part of the game, only up by 1 point. There were plays and decisions that the Lava made that were based on games they'd already played this season where they were up by more. And they decided to try and ice the game and run out some of the shot clock and try and maintain that lead and cut some of the clock. You cannot do that against the Mob team because the Mob can then rattle off a bunch of points and, like in that particular game, win by 15 because you were too busy trying to ice the game and run out the clock that you didn't continue to try and score. And I think that that's something that the Lava need to focus on. Do not let up against this Mob team. Whichever one of these teams starts fast and gets a big lead in the first quarter, that's the team I think is going to win this game. Because you need a fast start and then you need to keep your foot on their necks. If the Mob have a slow start and the Lava have a quick start, I need the Lava to not let up for the rest of the game. Because it's one of those things to go like, oh, we need to conserve energy for the finals, for the main event. No, you don't. Not if you're playing against the Mob. You need to beat the Mob and then you can worry about winning the main event. If you beat the Mob in the semis, you're the only team all season to have beaten them. So focus on that first if you're the Lava or the Wrath. Do not worry about the finals, right? Your finals is the semi-finals. You cannot think of anything other than that. It's beat the Mob and do not let them get their second win in the second half. Keep your foot on the neck and just keep going. I think the Lava will come out swinging. If they don't, they've made a terrible mistake. And whoever gets that quick run in the first quarter will likely win this game if they can hold on to that lead. That's Mob versus Lava. I'm not betting against the Mob. I think it's going to be a Mob win. But the Lava could challenge them. They could. There's a possibility. But it's going to be tough. It will be very tough for them. Let's talk that second main event. Buzzsaw versus Slashers. Throughout the season, the regular season, the teams are tied 2 wins, 2 losses apiece. The Buzzsaw are seen as a defensive, gritty, determined team anchored by Taekwon Scott at stopper. The energy of guys like Jamal Barnes Jr. and Malik Abdul-Haq playing further up the court at gunner and handler, or handler and gunner respectively. And just physical presence around the perimeter. The Slashers, by comparison, are an offense-first team with their star in Tony Crosby II, and a system that they've developed as the season has gone on that runs through Brad Laubacher, a lot of wing cuts, guys like Alonzo Scott getting up high and receiving a ball above the stopper as they drop down. It is an exciting game because it feels like defense versus offense. I'd love for either team to try and argue with me with that. I think that in the balance of power, the Slashers' defense has gotten better over the course of the season than the Buzz offense, if that makes sense. Nathan Karstens has really come into his own at stopper. Prior to yesterday, he was playing amazing, and obviously they lost to the Lava, so take from that what you will, but he was playing really well going into it. And I think that he's a problem for the Buzzsaw on the offensive end. The Buzz definitely need to get a lot of scoring out of Jamal Barnes Jr., Ralph Bellamy, and Malik Abdul-Haq, plus the little layups that they get from guys like Devontae Pratt and Howard. Those are guys who just drive and get the quick buckets. And you need to be throwing all of that at Nathan Karstens because he's shown that he's a big physical body that can get in the way. And I don't necessarily have that much confidence in the Buzz offensive sets, right? For the Slashers, they need to worry on the offensive end about where the scoring is going to come from. Because previously in the season, the Buzz totally locked them out by focusing a double team on Tony Crosby II and forcing Brad Laubacher and Alonzo Scott to be the ones to beat them with that 2-man game. I think the Slashers have proven that Laubacher, Scott, and Smith can win games without Tony Crosby II now, so long as Crosby still gets them like 10, 12 points, right? You do not need him to be a world beater for this team to win. But the thing is, the Buzz don't need to just focus on Tony Crosby. They could also disrupt the perimeter attacking from the rest of the Slashers team. So they need to be clicking on offense. They need Karstens to be as good as we all think he can be at stopper. The Buzz need to totally ice the Slashers offense if possible and make it really difficult for them to get inside the tramps and probably double Tony Crosby, and create scoring opportunities outside of just driving. And if driving's all they've got, they need to make sure that they finish every single one of those plays. This is one of those games. This is the closest game of the playoffs by far to me. I think this is the hardest pick. Buzzsaw versus Slashers in the semis, most likely. I do not feel comfortable about taking either team. They are both excellent teams that have flaws in their game. I think if I am talking about which team I think is the better team now at the end of the season, I think the Slashers have more options offensively while now having a better defense than they did earlier in the season. But I think that the Buzz are the team that are going to go through to the finals, both in terms of consistency all for the last 5 weeks and rest, because they will be coming into Thursday having not had to play a game since Sunday night. And I think that will be a benefit to them to an extent. It's not a huge benefit, but it's 4 days versus 2 days of rest. And I think rest is more important than rust, in that, as that old saying goes. So I don't feel comfortable about either pick, but I'm taking the Buzz over the Slashers. The finals, the main event, the first championship in the revival of SlamBall in the new era in Vegas ball, in SlamBall in Vegas. I think it's going to come down to first seed versus second seed, Mob versus Buzz, and I think the Mob are likely to win. And if anyone's got a problem with me saying that, every single number is in their favour. Every single number is in their favour, so why should I be picking against them? The Buzz have a really good defense, but their offense is not as good as most other teams in this league. It feels like that. I think that they would be very low. They'd be in the bottom half in teams in terms of offensive production. And I think that what they need to do from an offensive standpoint is realistically, I've said this throughout the season, if you have a team that scores double digits with 3 of your players minimum, that team is likely to win the game. And I think for the Buzz, their only options for that are Jamal Barnes Jr., Ralph Bellamy, and Malik Abdul-Haq. JBJ and Ralph Bellamy are tied for the most points scored in a game by the Buzz this season. That's 21 for both those guys, and that's pretty low in terms of like highest scoring output from a single player on a single team, right? Most other teams have got guys who can score more than that. One of those guys needs to score about 20. The other guy needs to score mid-teens, and Malik Abdul-Haq needs to get you a decent output offensively, right? And then again, tack on the Howards and the Pratts, getting you little layups, up and unders, little baskets here and there. The Buzz need that. You need double digits. You need Bellamy to play well because he's been up and down all season. If he plays well, he is the X factor for this team winning. On the defensive end, I've just told you they've got one of the better defenses in the league, specifically on the perimeter, and also with a good stopper. I've said all season, to beat the Mob, I think you need a stopper who stops 100% of drives and 90% of single cuts. And then you just have to live with the idea that they might struggle against multiple cutters. And then you need strong perimeter defense that stops them from getting into the lane. And the difficult part is, I think you also need a decent representation on the island to stop them feeling comfortable getting passes off around that area. We've seen the Buzz earlier in the season completely lock out the perimeter offense from the Mob for a little bit, and then they make 1 or 2 cuts inside. Basically, the Buzz were letting Cam Horton get to the island, and then they were just trying to stop anyone from meeting him there inside the tramps. And I think that it worked for a bit, but it doesn't work for a full game. I think it's a really difficult... I've just laid out, you need a really good stopper, which they have in Taekwon Scott. You need perimeter defense, which they can do, and you need island defense. And it's difficult to do perimeter and island at the same time without giving away a bunch of silly fouls or open drives on the perimeter, or letting the team flop their way to a bunch of bonus points on the island. So I think that the Buzz are in a really difficult position going up against this team. I think you need your defense to click 100%, and you need Jamal Barnes Jr., Ralph Bellamy, and Malik Abdul-Haq all to score in double digits minimum to win, right? For the Mob, they just need to run their plays as normal. Not come out slow, and if they do come out slow, really turn it up in the second half, because I think they could outscore the Buzz easily. The Buzz need to learn from previous experience that if the Mob do come out slow, they can't let up. They need to score, and make it really impossible for the Mob to get anything going. There is no second chance, right? Just like for the Lava, that is their finals if they are meeting the Mob in the second round. For whoever meets them in the finals, this is an obvious statement, there is no second chance. There is no second chance for you. You need to beat the Mob in order to get a championship, and no one is betting against them, right? And I think I do not need to explain to anyone watching who has been a fan of SlamBall this season. I do not need to explain to you why I'm not betting against the Mob. You know my reasons. And we will get into them as we now talk about end of season awards. Those are my predictions for the playoffs. These are what I am picking for the different awards that SlamBall will be putting out. I believe they've said that they will start to put out end of season awards over the course of this week. They haven't publicly announced what the awards are, but they have told me, and they did say I could announce them. So it's on my Twitter, it's everywhere, that it's MVP, Coach of the Year, DPOY, which is Defensive Player of the Year, OPOY, which is Offensive Player of the Year, an All SlamBall first team and an All SlamBall second team. Now, I don't know the specific details about how those things are going to be quantified, but I've got my, decisions about it, and we're going to go through them just now. Why am I thinking the Mob are going to win the championship? Well, they went undefeated, they're 16-0, and they are the best team in SlamBall. They're getting Coach of the Year win with Brendan Kirsch. The team from the first weekend looked like they were coached totally differently from every other team. Their offense was so slick. Their defense is so consistent. They don't give away a lot of points around the perimeter with bad fouls. And when it comes to the end of the season, something we were told was that a point differential is going to be important. The Mob are 400 points better than the next best team on point differential. 400 points better than second. That's crazy. They were beating teams by an average of 26.5 points. In their last game before the main event, in the last game that Circus Sports could put a betting line on, their plus minus was plus 22.5 points against the Rumble. That speaks to the Rumble being the first team eliminated from playoff contention, but it also speaks to the Mob are just an ungodly team to have to go up against, right? So I think Brendan Kirsch, Coach of the Year. The other reason that they're an ungodly team to go against is they've got the MVP. And it's not been a question since week 3. The MVP of this new era of SlamBall is Gage Smith. He is the cornerstone of the best team in the league by far. Coach Kirsch told me earlier in the season, or even pre-season, everyone on his team knows they can be replaced, and that's what makes them good, because they all want to work together for the benefit of the family, for the benefit of the Mob. The exception to that rule of everyone is replaceable is that Gage Smith is not replaceable. No one is doing what he is doing in this league, right? First off, at the stopper position, which is the main defensive position in SlamBall, he could have been your Defensive Player of the Year as well. I think that the league should separate MVP and DPOY and OPOY, at least for this first season. Because if you can give multiple guys an award and say, look at this, look at this, look at this, these guys are all really great, then that's like a good advertisement for your league, right? That is a good thing to be able to say, is like, this is our MVP and this is our DPOY and this is OPOY, and look, it's different players. And so I don't think he's going to get DPOY. I wouldn't do it personally, but I think that he probably, in any other season, he would get both. Because he's first in the league in loose ball recoveries with 9.8 per game. Second place is 8.1 per game. He's second in stops per game at 9.1, which is just 0.7 behind the guy above him. He's first in the league in total steals with 28, which is 12 steals above second place, right? There are no steals per games in this league, but he is leading in totals, right? Not only is he really good at the defensive end, he's also got options when it comes to scoring. Pre-season, he was playing as a gunner, and now with the way the Mob plays, they asked him to play stopper, and obviously he's really good at that. But he is an offensive first kind of guy, as we've seen. He is third in the league in points per game when it comes to stoppers. The only guys above him are Amir Smith for the Slashers and Tamyrick Fields for the Rumble. Both of those guys were able to play more minutes. I don't know this for sure, but they played more minutes per game at the gunner position than Gage got an opportunity to do. All three of them got moments where they didn't have to play stopper a full game, but Gage had more minutes where he was having to just play stopper than the other two guys were. He's also the only player to score a triple-double in SlamBall history with 10 points. I can't remember the exact numbers for the rest of it, but he's got the first triple-double in SlamBall history, and that wasn't like it's come out of nowhere, he's managed to do a triple-double. He almost hit triple-double in like 5 games out of the 16 that they played. He was like 2 stats away, and by that I mean like 2 LBRs or 2 stops away, like 5 times over the course of the season. But that's not his offensive strength isn't in scoring, right? And you're going to go, Sam, that's crazy. He's the third most, points per game of any stopper. He is probably the most points per game of anyone who played a significant number of stop minutes. All of this stuff, right? His best attribute offensively is setting up guys from the half court. He fires outlet passes while horizontal. Like he'll get a stop, he'll come down, he'll gather the ball, he'll be lying on his back, and he'll gun the ball to the other end of the court and set up the fast break for his team regularly. Every single game, he's getting multiple of these. Think like a Nikola Jokic full court throw. I know Toxic Takes was talking about he is the Nikola Jokic of SlamBall, and 100%, he's in that term alone, he is getting distance with an outlet pass. And then he's also at times coming up into the half court as the guy carrying the ball, passing it off to someone, and then setting a weak side screen, which turns him into a passing option in the half court set from the side tramp. And yet it never feels like he's rushing back on defense to get in way of a fast break from the other team. He's always there defensively while also still being an occasional part of the offense for this team. He is by far the best player in this league. He is the prototype for a SlamBall player now, if you're looking at that thing. He is Clark Kent off the court and Superman on the court. He is the eraser. He is the rubber. He is, as Hernando Planels calls him, AI, because he's getting better every week like an artificial intelligence. He's learning the game and he's improving. And this is the guy that, this isn't just a me thing. This is, everyone's been saying this since like week 2, that this guy is it. And so I think this is the easiest pick of any of the awards. MVP, Gage Smith. Let's go to some of the harder ones. For my Defensive Player of the Year, I've gone with Faisal Shafat of the Lava. He was first in stops per game, and he was fourth in the league in loose balls recovered per game. I think that those stats are indicative of like a guy who's, again, top 5 in the 2 major defensive stats. I believe he is minimum top 3 stopper in this league. His team had the second best point differential at a positive 52 points per game. Part of that's because they only played the Mob once, but they're still the only team other than the Mob to have a positive plus minus in terms of point differential. And part of that is because of what he does at the defensive end. He is getting in guys' faces. He has a big physical body. He is able to set up some offense as well, but from a purely defensive perspective, this guy is tough to beat. We talked about that earlier with the Wrath Lava game that we're expecting on Tuesday. I don't like a team having to go up against Faisal Shafat. That's scary because he is a big defensive presence. That is the thing. I think that his presence and his existence in that role is enough to just totally throw off an offense. And that's why I think he's Defensive Player of the Year. The first in stops per game and fourth in LBRs is another big indicator of that. When it comes to Offensive Player of the Year, I'm going with Ty McGee. He's first in points per game, 5th in the league in assists per game, 8th in the league in loose balls recovered, and 8th in the league in hits, right? So those last 2 are more defensive stats, but I just want to show you this guy's everywhere. His points per game is 7.1 points per game higher than the second best guy in terms of points per game, which is Darius Clark. Now, Darius Clark is above him when it comes to total points overall, but McGee's still second in total points, despite having played 4 less games than Darius Clark and the player who was in 4th place, and 3 more games than the guy who was in 3rd place for total points, right? He is leading his team in assists per game as well. So not only is he winning his team games by scoring a bunch, he's winning them games by setting up other players. At one point this season, he held the record for the most points ever scored in a game with 43 points. That's what commentary said. That's what was announced on the broadcast. But if you look at the stats page for SlamBall, it said it was 45 points. I don't know. I need to check if that's like violation points count for him, or I don't know. And then in his last game of the regular season, again, on the broadcast, they said he scored 42 points. On the stats page, it says he scored 38. So I don't know what's going on there, but big output. His lowest scoring game all season, right? The lowest scoring game where he played the full game was 17 points. No, 16 points. 16 points was his lowest scoring game where he played the full game. His lowest score total was 14 points, which is where he left midway through with a concussion. He still scored 14 points before that, and he was going to score more. And again, his lowest is 16. He is probably one of the only players, if not the only player, who hasn't scored less than double digits in a game all season. So I think he's a clear Offensive Player of the Year winner. Let's talk about all SlamBall first and second teams, and then we will get out of here, right? And this is where some feathers might get ruffled, but I will explain all of my reasoning. There is a reason. I'm not just saying words here. I've got logic behind what I'm talking about, right? All SlamBall first team for this revival, this brand new era of the world of SlamBall in Vegas in 2023 I'm just excited. I just keep saying that because I'm just so excited. But our first team, to me, stopper, Gage Smith. Handler, Tony Crosby the second. Gunner, Ty McGee. Gunner, Darius Clark. Let's go through them one by one. We talked about Gage Smith first in LBR, second in stops, first in total steals, and third most points per game amongst stoppers, right? He is the MVP. He deserves to be in that position. No one is coming close to matching those stats. Our handler, Tony Crosby II, the star guy on the third best team in the league in terms of rankings. He is fifth in points per game, and at one point he was leading the whole league. He is fourth in assists per game, and he is first in total hits with 48, which is exactly double the guy in second place. So this guy is being a perimeter deterrent for teams, while also being top 5 in the 2 biggest offensive categories in terms of points per game and assists per game. Really good from Tony Crosby II, and he's a face of the league with some of the highlights he's been able to pull off. His offense comes from straight drives, from being the secondary and tertiary option on offense, but also being able to create for himself and others inside the tramp. So fourth in assists per game, he is also the team leader for his team in assists per game. I mentioned Ty McGee as Offensive Player of the Year. First in points per game, second in total points, fifth in assists per game, eighth in loose balls recovered, and eighth in hits. He is everywhere for his team, on the offensive end, on the defensive end, on picking up scrappy plays, on just getting in the way of the offense and making it harder for other teams. I think Ty McGee makes sense in the first team. And then Darius Clark from the Mob. Here's where things get slightly dicey. The Mob went 16-0. They won every game. No team beat them. No team was close to beating them at any serious degree, right? You can argue, I think they had some games where it was a single point differential in the win, but they were 400 points better than the next best team in terms of point differential. That's hard to overcome. And when I'm thinking about that 16 wins, right, I think that your first and second team for a season, for a league, it has to be individual player performance. Your team could suck, but if you're amazing in a lot of different ways, you can get onto a team, like a team of the year. But it also needs to reflect team success. And the Mob went 16-0, right? So I think, in my mind, right, I was this close to putting their entire starting 4 onto the top 2 teams. And instead I've gone with 3 players from their team, right? So Gage Smith we talked about. Darius Clark is the guy who I think ends up getting onto the second team. So he was first in total points in the league despite missing 3 games with a chest bruise, and second in points per game overall. He's also 6th in the league when it comes to hits. When we talk about his other stats and whatnot, they don't necessarily blow you away in terms of where he lies on the list of things. He's 38th in the league in points and assists per game. He's 39th in steals total, and he's 30th in LBRs per game, right? These are all middle of the pack to below middle of the pack numbers for Darius Clark. But this is he's getting this award because the Mob have been so good that they deserve to have multiple players in the team of the year. If you want to argue that, right, I'm putting 3 guys on the team of the year for a team that hasn't lost. The 72-10 Bulls had 2 guys on the first team. The 73-9 Warriors had 3 players spread across 3 team of the years, right? I think it's valid for me or for the league or for anyone that's watching this sport to put 3 Mob guys in our 2 teams of the year. And that's why Darius Clark is the guy that makes it up there. That's the first team for this first season back. I love being able to say that. Gage Smith, Tony Crosby II, Ty McGee, and Darius Clark. Let's talk about the second team. Second team All SlamBall. At stopper, we've got Tyquan Scott. At handler, we've got Cam Horton. Sorry, I should say teams. Tyquan Scott of the Buzz, Cam Horton of the Mob. Kayshawn Jones of the Griffins is your other gunner. And Bradley Laubacher from the Slashers is gunner as well. Let's go through the numbers. Tyquan Scott, 3rd in the league in stops per game, 2nd in the league in loose balls recovered, 4th in total steals, and an anchor for a very good defensively minded team in the Buzz. I wasn't high on him early in the season. I got told by some people to look at the stats. Those are the stats. He has played really, really well. And the Buzz, as clearly the second best team, deserved some representation on this top 2 teams. Did they deserve 2 people potentially? Potentially, but we'll talk about that with a couple of honourable mentions as to why maybe they didn't get into that role. Tyquan Scott, incredible defensive player, even if I don't think he's as good at disrupting in the tramp as other people. I'm the low man on this. There are so many other people who are saying he's an amazing player. And the stats back that up, right? And the team that he plays for being second in the league and him not missing very many games, another reason why they're so good, right? At handler, Cam Horton for the Mob. Like I said, I think they deserve 3 guys minimum on the 2 teams of the year based on how well they've been playing. Cam Horton, in terms of over the course of the whole league, he's 14th in points per game, which is like low-ish. You know, it's still top half of the league. It's close to like it's top third of the league even. It's well within top third of players. But you look at the numbers and you go 14th, that's not very high. And you go, yeah, but that's because every member of like his team starting 5 are top 25 scorers. And so he's going to be like lower down because you've got guys like Darius Clark and Cam Hollins that are above just because they're playing the gunner position. He's handler. Handler scores sometimes, but handler isn't always your main scorer. Do you know what they are your main guy at doing? Distribution, getting the ball to other players. And Cam Horton is first in the league in assists per game with 4.4 assists per game because he is the guy that is setting up these passes for the rest of the mob. And a thing I want to draw attention to, he's got the highest assists per game at 4.4. He has 44 more assists total than the next best player at assists per game. That's crazy output for a guy to be that much higher. Again, we talked about it with Tony Crosby II with hits. We talked about it with Gage Smith with steals. That is a crazy high number, more than the others in terms of assists per game, which is something that you just expect to get more of over the course of a season. So Tyquan Scott is your second all SlamBall team stopper. Cam Horton is your second all SlamBall team handler. Gunner, Keyshawn Jones. You might argue, the Griffs are 6th place. Do they deserve a guy who is, top 8 player in the league? Here's why I put Keyshawn Jones on here. I looked at 5 different gunners because gunner was the last spot I had to decide on. And I basically looked at all of their statistical categories and compared who was better at what and ranked them and then saw who had like the better rank if we compared all those things. And that's why Keyshawn Jones and Bradley Laubacker get in here. That's why Darius Clark gets in the first team. We'll talk about a couple of the guys in the honourable mentions who didn't make it for that reason. You might call BS on that, fine. But Keyshawn Jones scored the 3rd most points per game in the league, 4th most points per game, 4th points total best in the league. His scoring is what put the Griffins within a chance of getting into the playoffs. Yes, there were games where Justin Holmes, his running buddy, is the other gunner in the Holmes and Jones connection. Holmes won them some games with his play, but Keyshawn Jones kept them in games with his scoring. And I think that's why he deserves a position in the gunner role in the top 2 teams of the year, right? He won the Griffins games. He got them into this playoff position because he had games where he was scoring 30 plus points regularly. 37s, 39s, just off the rip. Really good from him. One thing I didn't mention about Darius Clark, actually, for the first team, he also now has the record for the most points per game, according to SlamBall, with 44 in the last game of the season for the Mob. So there you go, there's another thing for him. Our other gunner in the second team is Bradley Laubacker, and some people might think I'm crazy for this, right? Again, I compared 5 different gunners that I thought were within a shout of getting into this position. And he is the only guy out of those 5 who is top 20 in the 5 main statistical categories in my mind, for SlamBall, right? He is 16th in points per game, 12th in assists per game, 5th in total steals, 6th in loose balls recovered per game, and 13th in total hits, right? Those are, to me, the 5 main statistical categories for SlamBall when you're assessing how good someone is. And Laubacker is top 20, top 3rd of the league in all of those different categories. He's also the guy that has improved the Slashers' offense by his ability to make a pass on the bottom tramp on a short wing cut and all this different stuff that is the reason that the Slashers have been able to maintain their momentum going towards the playoffs and keeping that 3rd spot as we go into the first postseason of the new era. He was doing everything. I know he's not scoring as much as maybe other guys in the gunner position, but if he isn't your scorer, you want him to be doing everything else. And he's still decent at scoring. He's still, again, like top 3rd in the league, top 20 in the league, close to top 15 in the league. And he's top 20 in every other like major category. Top 15 even in every other major category. So Bradley Laubacker is my other gunner for the All SlamBall second team 2023. I've got 4 honourable mentions, right? And hear me out on these. Faisal Shafat, who I picked for Defensive Player of the Year, doesn't end up being in a Team of the Year. I think that he's not in Team of the Year because the stopper position was really hard to call between the three guys. Gage is obviously your first team, right? Gage Smith. Taekwon and Faisal Shafat are very comparable in terms of what they bring to the stopper position. And I thought that Team of the Year, Taekwon deserved to be on there because of his team's success. But if you want Defensive Player of the Year, that's why I gave Faisal Shafat that. I think both those guys deserve representation in year-end awards for how good they've been. But there's only one stopper option. And I went with Ty. And I gave Faisal Defensive Player of the Year. If you want to swap those, I'd understand. But on team success alone, I think Ty deserves more recognition for, like, you know, Team of the Year. Talking about team success and the Buzz. Some people might go, right, the Buzz are the second best team in the league. They deserve more representation. I guess they're still 7 games behind the Mob in terms of wins. So that's, you know, significant. Some teams only played 8 games, right? Some teams could have only played 8 games, right? That's the worst team in the league only plays 8 games, right? And you're 7 games behind the best team. And you're only like 1 or 2 games up on the third team, right? I think teams need representation in these end of season awards, and maybe the Buzz deserve more. But these are the 2 guys I was looking at for, do they fit into the Team of the Year, right? Malik Abdul-Haq at Gunner, sorry. He actually ended up with a bunch of stops as well, having to play some minutes for Taekwon, which was just cool to see. He's got 10 stops on the season, which is cool. But he's second in the league in total steals, 15th in loose ball recoveries, 18th in hits. But his points per game and assists per game are really, really low compared to the other guys I was looking at, right? He is 28th in points per game and 32nd in assists per game. So just when you look at him compared again to like Brad Laubacker, yes, he's way higher in steals. Yes, he's way higher on like on hits. Oh, he's not. He's lower on hits and he's lower on LBR. So I feel justified in that. But he's an option. It's just that the points and the assist output wasn't high enough that I could justify putting him in, even though his steals and hits and LBRs are all decent to find, right? Gunner is a hard position because it's the one that gets 2, and there's a lot of gunners on the field. The other guy is Jamal Barnes Jr. He felt like the guy who was giving them a lot of energy. He won some games for them with late game heroics. He was like one of their scoring leaders, again with the most points in a single game, tied with Ralph Bellamy. He is the heart and soul of this team to a degree, and he's been really exciting to watch. He would have been my second pick if it weren't for the fact that he's playing at handler. And I just don't think he pips out Tony Crosby, and I think that those 44 plus assists for Cam Horton is just too hard to overcome. He led his team in points per game with 11.7, which was like, I think 11th in the league. 11th or like, I believe 11th and 14th in the league overall, which is your like leading scorer on your team isn't necessarily great. He was 23rd in the league in assists per game, 3rd in total steals, and 11th in hits total. So his numbers are good, right? His numbers are good. This is an excellent SlamBall player. They're just not good enough to beat out Tony Crosby II and Cam Horton. And then my final honourable mention, I said, do the Mob deserve 4 players? The 4th guy who was in consideration was Cam Hollins, and I really thought about giving them 4 of the spots. Maybe they deserved it for going undefeated. You guys can tell me in the comments or on Twitter or wherever you want to talk SlamBall. But the play of this team was so spread out in terms of who was contributing what that it's really hard to make a decision over certain guys. I mean, there's things like, if you want to just talk about hits and like steals and stuff, Brandon Simpson immediately jumps higher in the conversation. Cam Hollins, you know, he ended this season with 8th in points per game, right? He was 8th in points per game and he was 10th in total hits. Those are nice. But if we look at the other numbers, he's 40th in assists per game, which means he just squeaks in to the second third of players in the league. He's 40th in total steals, which again, just squeaks in. And he was 36th in loose ball recoveries. I just don't want to put him above guys like Keyshawn Jones, who won games for their team. Brad Laubacker, who does everything for the Slashers. Obviously Darius Clark, who was up there in the first team. Or Ty McGee, there's, you know, an excellent player for his team. That's the difficulty when you have a team of guys who do everything for their squad. I actually meant to check this pre going on here, but the Atlanta Hawks one year in the NBA had 4 all-star players when it got to the half point of the league of the season, right? It was 2015 and they had 4 players who were all playing on the all-star game, right? And if I look at the 2014-15 NBA all NBA teams, I'm expecting that they won't have more than maybe like 2 guys, because basically that was the season that they did really, really well in terms of like regular season wins. They went a total of 60-22, which was the highest for the Eastern Conference, right? And that's why they got 4 All-Stars, because they were so far ahead at the halfway point. But when we look at the end of the season, when we look at the All-NBA awards, right, there are a grand total of 0 Atlanta Hawks on the All-NBA teams, right? And that's another team that played really well, but they don't have like individual success that propels them into these All-NBA conversations. So that's why I think 3 is enough. If you want a 4th, it's Cam Hollins for the Mob. I don't think they need 4 guys. I think they're good enough with 3. And like I said, he was just too low down in some other statistical categories. So those are my picks for the All SlamBall teams for this first revival season of SlamBall. Summer Season 6 rolls off the tongue in Vegas. The playoffs come tomorrow. There will be an episode of This Week in SlamBall that comes out tomorrow. It'll be a 30-minute long one. It'll be me talking to Coach Bear and Craig Skitstimus about these awards, about the end of the regular season, about players that we are excited to see come back for Season 7, and everything in between with that, right? That will come out tomorrow. But hopefully you've enjoyed listening or watching Bounce Off. Hopefully I've given you some insight to what the playoffs might look like. Hopefully you agree, you don't need to, with my end of season award picks. If you've got a different perspective, let me know who should be in different positions. Should maybe Tony Crosby II be in more contention for Defensive Player of the Year because of the number of hits he got? Should maybe Faisal Shafat be in the All-Second team and it's Taekwon Scott that gets the Defensive Player of the Year? Or should Faisal Shafat not get any awards and we just, spur him all off, right? Is Gage Smith the unanimous MVP, or do you have a claim that someone else is better than him? I would love to hear it in the comments or on Twitter at QUANTUM Roberts. You can also follow me on Instagram. Thank you for listening and watching. SlamBall is back tomorrow with the first ever quarterfinals of this revival season. The finals are on Thursday. I'm excited for it, and I'm also so sad that we're almost done with this. But there will be more SlamBall before next summer, and I will try and cover that SlamBall when it returns, and I will cover it when we come back next summer. But this is not the end. We still have the rest of this week to talk SlamBall. And then on Twitter, forever and ever, where we can fantasy book teams, we can talk about lots of stuff. But I should get out of here. You should get on with the rest of your day. Thank you so much for watching and listening. I've been Sam Roberts. SlamBall's cool.